special treat for this session as we welcome not one but two amazing speakers. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mamatha and Venkatesh, who will be leading us through this amazing session on simplifying OpenAPI documentation with Redocly. Mamatha is a passionate technical writer and enthusiastic artist. She brings in a unique blend of creativity and analytical thinking to her work. With a strong focus on improving user experience, she strives to simplify complex topics by sharing innovative ideas while fostering collaboration and cooperation with her team members. Venkatesh is an experienced technical author with a demonstrated history of working in the information technology and services industry. He is skilled in OpenAPI documentation and authoring tools. So let's welcome them both.
So good evening everyone. We are going to switch gears now and we're going to talk about OpenAPI documentation. I'm Mamatha, joined by my friend Venkatesh. We are from Hyderabad. To be more specific, we are going to talk about how we can generate OpenAPI documentation using Redocly. So the agenda of this presentation would be, we would first talk about what is Redocly, what are the different prerequisites for generating OpenAPI documentation with Redocly, what is our publishing process, what are the different customization options available in Redocly, and we will also be sharing insights on how we can resolve errors and what are writers' responsibilities throughout this process and what's the scope for automation, and then Venkatesh will give a walkthrough on our process. So when I just started my career as a writer, so we would manually add API information into our documents. That is, we would get the inputs from the developers, that is the endpoints and the parameters, etc. We would receive those inputs from the developers and we would manually add them to our authoring tool and then publish the output. Did anyone work like this with APIs? Right? So I'm sure all of you agree that this is very time consuming and it's also prone to errors. So if the users have UI, they at least can play around with it and figure things out. But when it comes to API documentation, accuracy is all the more important. So if you just miss adding one, like for example, for if you have like pointers, instead of pointers, if you have written pointer as the API endpoint, then what happens, then they'll not be able to send a request to that endpoint. So accuracy is super important, and working this way of just getting inputs from the developers in Confluence or in some emails or something is not at all efficient. It also lacks standardization, that is, there is no consistency unless you have very strict guidelines that you have shared with your teammates. Otherwise, it lacks standardization. So now we have a lot of API documentation tools like Swagger, Redoc, Docuservice, Postman. We have worked a little with Swagger and Postman, and we have extensively worked with Redoc, and we'll be focusing on Redoc for this presentation. So I'm probably using Redoc and Redocly a bit interchangeably, but then Redoc is a core open source tool that helps us generate OpenAPI documentation from our OpenAPI specs, that is the YAML files that we receive from the developers. And Redocly CLI is a command line interface which has some additional features, like you can customize the output and you can also validate the OpenAPI spec using this CLI. And Redocly also has commercial tool, and this has more advanced features, like it allows collaboration between different stakeholders, and you can also integrate Markdown with it. But we have only worked with Redocly CLI because it essentially just caters to all our needs. So if you have to do a quick comparison between the outputs of Swagger and Redocly, Swagger, we have a single pane output, and you have to click on the drop down of each of those endpoints to see the details related to that particular API. Whereas in Redocly, you have three different sections, and on the left hand side you get the DOC, and in the middle you get the title and the parameters of that API. And on the right, you have request and response samples. So it looks good, and it's also very easy to navigate. Also, Swagger does not have any customization options, and Redocly provides a lot of customization options. And for Swagger, you need to host it somewhere. But with Redocly, we can generate a static HTML output which you can directly add to your documentation portal. Coming to the prerequisites for generating OpenAPI documentation with Redocly. So we need to install Node.js, Merge CLI and Redocly CLI. They're all open source. So we need Merge CLI if we have like multiple YAML files and we want to merge all of them into single YAML file. That's when we use Merge CLI. Of course, you need OpenAPI specification, that is the source files that we use, which are checked in by the developers. They're either in YAML or JSON. And then you have to resolve the dependencies. Before we can run the build command of Redocly, you need to resolve the dependencies in the sense like, if there is a YAML file which is referent to another YAML file in a different folder, we need to ensure that all of them are copied properly and at the right location before you can run the build command. Otherwise, you might get broken links and you would not be able to publish the output. So coming to our publishing process, if we have a single YAML file, we will pull all of them, we will pull that file from Git, we verify the dependencies as I already discussed, and then we use the build command of Redocly to generate the output and we get it reviewed. At this stage, if we get any feedback, we then go back and edit the source files, that is our single source of truth. So from our side, we only add the DOC, but all the important content, everything related to the APIs itself is in the YAML files, and that's our single source of truth. And once it is reviewed and approved, we publish to production. In case we have multiple YAML files, this is a case where you have a suite of products and with a lot of submodules, each of them would have a different YAML file. That's when we pull all the YAML files from Git, we verify the dependencies, and we then use Merge CLI to merge all of them into a single YAML file. And then we generate the output using Redocly. We get it reviewed and then published to production. So there are a lot of customization options in Redocly. To work with this, to customize the output, what we need to do is we need to create redocly.yaml file and place it in the location where you are running the build command. So what the build command will do is that it will detect the presence of this file, and whatever parameters and values you have added in this file, it will consider those and then it will publish the output. So these are some of the customization options that we have worked with. So for some reason, if you do not want the user to download the OpenAPI spec, you can hide the download button. By default, the download button appears in the output. If you set this to true, the download button is hidden. And another customization option is show extensions. So by default, extensions are not added to the output. And we can use this option to show extensions. If you set it to true, every extension that is added to the source file is displayed in the output. You can also send an array of extensions that you want to publish. Like if you want only 2 extensions to be published in the output, you can send the array of those, you can pass that array of extensions to this parameter, and only those extensions will be published in the output. So we had a use case in our project that they introduced X lifecycle extension, and they added this so that the customers can know whether the API is for LA, GA, or whether it has been deprecated. And they wanted us to display this in the output, so we then used this option to show that extension in our output. We can also disable search. We can also change the theme of the output, that is, you can change the colors, fonts based on your branding guidelines. Another way of customization is that it has some inbuilt extension that it supports. You can use X logo to add the logo of your company to the output, and usually the summary is displayed as the title of an API, but you can use X display name if you want to display a different name for that particular API or like a couple of APIs. You can also use X tag groups. This is really important. So when you want to categorize the TOC elements into subsections, we can use X tag groups, and Venkatesh will be demoing on this. So errors and resolutions, this is probably the most important aspect of our whole discussion here, because when we first received this project, we had to start everything from scratch. and we were still learning how to use this tool, and we didn't have any information, and we were doing a lot of research, and we were also running into a lot of errors. So after some research and trial and error, we could then generate the output. So it helps initially, once we get used to different kind of errors that we may get, it gets a little easier. So type error is one of the errors that we had got, and this is when there is mismatch in data types, or if there is a required field that's added but the parameters are not passed with, that is if it is left blank, we were getting this error. And sometimes what happens is, though there is an issue in OpenAPI spec, it passes the test. So the developers and the testers, they will not have an issue, but you may not be able to publish the output because Redocly expects OpenAPI standard YAML files. So we were having this issue, and then because we merged a lot of files into a single file, it was then difficult for us to understand which file has the issue and then which line has the issue. So we had to do a lot of reverse engineering. We would try to understand which of those, so we would publish, like we would run the build command for each of the YAML files to check whether that particular file has an issue and things like that. And so we can also actually use lint command, but the lint command can give you a long list of errors, and not all of them need to be addressed. Also in customization, you can pass rule sets. So based on the rule sets, it will validate the YAML files. Another error that we get very often is the JSON pointer error. This is when the dependencies are not resolved properly, but it is pretty easy to resolve because it will give you the exact broken link, and you can just go back and check what's the issue and then copy the files in the relevant folders and it will be resolved. And yeah, invalid specification error, like I said, Redocly expects the files that exactly follow OpenAPI specification. So if the source files that you are using are not in compliance with OpenAPI, that's when we get this error. So it's also important for us to educate the developers to follow OpenAPI specifications. It's easy for us and also for them, but that's actually the toughest part. So what we try to do is we try to generate the Redocly build command for each of those YAML files from time to time so that we don't have any surprises in the end. So coming to writers' responsibilities throughout this process, so whenever an API is introduced, we try to understand why it is introduced, what is its role in the product. We use Postman to test it, and we try to validate the OpenAPI specification, and we try to customize the output. That is, we try to generate the TOC and all of that based on the inputs from the PMs. And we generate the document, we collaborate and get it reviewed, and then we deploy it to production once it is approved. Coming to scope for automation, so one of our pipelines is already automated, so everything that I've talked so far can all be automated. So we have used like Python scripts, and we use GitLab CI/CD for the whole pipeline to automate this whole process. And we actually have a submodule where it has around like 1500 APIs, so it's actually practically not possible for us to validate all of them, so it makes sense to automate all of that. So we are soon going to automate other modules as well. So then writer's responsibility would then be like reviewing the API descriptions and parameter descriptions, ensuring correct TOC, and also managing the pipelines. We also try to do a lot of doc ops all by ourselves, and if we are stuck somewhere, that's when we reach out to DevOps and other people to share some insights or to understand where we can, how we can correct an error. But yeah, we are trying to do automation for the other modules all by ourselves, and then whenever we need more insights, that's when we reach out to the developers. Venkatesh will now do a demo on our process. Thank you so much.
So hi all. So I am here. I will show the demo of how to generate the OpenAPI documentation using this Redocly. So I am going to show you step by step like what Mamatha mentioned in her presentation. So initially I will just generate the HTML documentation using single YAML file. So this is the YAML files are here. You can see that in the YAML file we have this so much of information in this YAML file here. So we have this title, description of the particular YAML file, and whatever the information which we see here is provided by the developers, like what is the APIs here. If you see, we have these different API requests in one YAML file. We can see the endpoints like /pets, and this is a test YAML file which I created for demo purpose. So we can see like summary, description of particular API request. We can see the tags, responses. So one API request starts from the HTTP method like get, summary, description, tags, and the responses. This is one API request. So and this /pets is one endpoint. Under one endpoint we have several HTTP methods and with different API requests. So let's try to generate this an HTML file from this YAML file. So to generate an HTML file from YAML file, this is the Redocly command which we use. npx@redocly./cli build docs. By using this command, we can generate the single YAML file to an HTML file. Let's see how the HTML file looks. So here, this is the HTML file which is generated from the YAML file. Once we run that command, we can see the three-pane layout here. In the left pane, we have the API details. Different APIs are there here, where different API requests are present in the left pane of the HTML file. And we have different which are grouped under specific tags here. And in the middle pane, we can see the particular API request with all the details, like what is the summary of the API request, description of the particular API request, which have the more information about the API request. And we have the parameters, different parameters in the table format. We can have the descriptions also of the parameters. On the right side pane, we can see the endpoints with the HTTP method and the body of the API request. We can also see the responses like success response and error response. So whatever is present in the YAML file, we can see in this HTML file once we run that build command. We can see the description for the particular group of the APIs here, right? So pet management, pet information. We have description here like operations for managing pets and all. So to get this description in the YAML file, we need to add in the starting of the YAML file, we need to add this one like in the tags. So what are the tags that are present in the particular API request? We just call those tags here, and we have the description to the particular API tags here. So we'll get the description. It will call all the respective tags in the HTML file, and it gives the description for the particular group of the API files. So now we can see like as Mamatha told, one of the error like OpenAPI specification. If we don't follow the OpenAPI specification, let's see what type of error we'll get. So here I'm just removing this summary and description at the top of the YAML file. I'm running the command to build the HTML file. See here we get the command error called unsupported specification. So the developers may pass the test because they might not follow this specification. But for generating HTML file, definitely we need to follow these specifications to generate the HTML file. And also let's see how the summary description of the API requests are very important, and also the tags also important in generating the OpenAPI documentation. So I'm removing this particular API request, and I will generate the output file here using the same command which I used earlier. So now we can see under the pet information tag, we have three API requests like get, all pets, all these are there. So if I remove that,
Sorry, please.
So once I generate that API HTML file, so I remove that tag. So once I remove that tag, the particular API request which came under the TOC, so it's not coming under the group called pet information, and that pet API request also does not have any information like what is the summary or the description of the particular API request. So as an end user, it will not be it is not useful for the end user to know about that API request. What is the information about that particular endpoint or particular API request? So summary and descriptions are very important for an API request to know more information about it. So generally now we have discussed about only the one YAML file, but in our company, in our product, there will be multiple modules. So each module has different YAML files. So we need to generate an OpenAPI documentation. We need to merge all those YAML files, and we need to convert that into an HTML file using the Redocly build command. So let's see how to merge the different YAML files here. So as this is one merge.json file, OpenAPI.merge.json file. So similar to the pet API which I sample file which I generated earlier, like that I created few more YAML files like fish YAML file, authentication YAML file, few sample files, and in this mesh.json file I added all those as input files here, and we can also prepend the endpoints like /API, whatever the endpoints we want to prepend, we can add the prepend in this input files only. So all these input files are merged into one output file called OpenAPI/m, what we given in the output here. So once we run the command to merge all the input files, that will merge file is converted into this OpenAPI -cm YAML file. So to merge all these inputs, this is the command called npx OpenAPI -merge CLI. So using this command, we can merge all the YAML files into single YAML file, and later that single YAML file will be converted into a HTML file using the build command which we used earlier. So once I run the command, you can see all the input files are merged here, and it is generated into a single YAML file here. You can see that whatever the information is present in the different YAML files, it came into this merged YAML file here with the rest of the tags, names, and descriptions, and all are coming in here. So I'm now changing the description to random one, which is the title description for the generated HTML file. So now we try to generate the HTML file for this one. We got an error here like invalid JSON pointer. Like you can see that schemas.incident.yaml. So it's like looking for the incident.yaml file once we convert the HTML file. As Mamatha mentioned in her presentation, the prerequisite is we need to resolve the dependencies. So I didn't check for the dependencies here. So it's looking for a file called incident.yaml file here. So let's check the how to resolve this error. To resolve this error, let's check the folder structure here. So if you go to see the folder structure here, there are like 4 API files here: aquarium, authentication, nursery, and pet store. Whatever the merged file we have created, it was created outside these folders, and we don't see that incident.yaml file here, and the schema folder is also not present in this current folder. It is referring to that particular file which is not there in the folder. So if we go now, say in this authentication file, we can see that schemas and incident file is there. So we need to copy all these dependency folders to outside the respective module folders. So I will copy these folders outside the respective module folders, but we can see that errors, schemas are present in every folder. So if we try to copy, there is we might replace the files of each module folders. So to avoid that one, we will copy the folders called response and schemas and errors, but we need to make sure that each response or each error files which have the naming specific to the module specific. So we might change those names, but we need to make sure that the developers while creating those files, they made to follow the naming convention respective to the module. So it will be easy for us to generate an HTML file and we'll be copying those to the outside the respective folders. So now I copied all these folders to the respective module folders like responses, errors, and schemas here. See, now I copied all the folders outside the response module folders here, and we copied the respective files also to the individual folders, and I try to generate the HTML file. And we generated the HTML file. On the left side of the HTML file, we can see all the list of API requests here. Whatever the API requests are present in the different multiple YAML files, we can see here, and we can also see the right side also. We can see the prepended API endpoints, right, /API. We can see that endpoint also in the right side of the APIs, and also in the search bar we can search for the particular API request with some names also. So now we can see like we get all the different types of API requests on the website in the TOC here, but it's not a structured way. If the end user want to go for the particular API under a particular group, right? So it is not a structured way to know which API you want to search for. So for that one, we can structure the TOC, call the tag called X tag groups, which was already mentioned by Mamatha in the presentation. So I will write this use this tag called X tag groups. By using X tag groups, I can group the different types of API requests under one name. So if I see that by creating a group called fish group, I can call all the tags which are related to the fish group, and under the tags we can add that one. And so in the same manner, I can add the different types of the API request API tags here, so that I can generate the HTML file. So now we can see the difference. Earlier we have the list of API requests here, and now we can just structure the API requests are structured into different groups like fish, plants, and authentication and pets. So in this manner, we can use the different tag groups to structure the TOC of the HTML file. So we can also like move them in, arrange them in alphabetical order also to get the TOC structured TOC. Like I'm arranging this in the alphabetical order here. So in this manner, we can structure the TOC of an HTML file using our YAML files also. So let's see how can we configure this HTML file. So we can see this download button here. To disable this download button and also to add some extensions here, we can use the config file. So let's see how the configuration file looks like. So see here, to disable this download button and to add the extensions, we need to create a file called redocly.yaml file. So in that redocly.yaml file, we just add here like this hide download button. We set it as true here, and also we can show the extensions here in this YAML file. So when we try to generate build an HTML file, it looks for this configuration file and it generates based on the whatever the configuration we set up in the config file. Here we can see that for this API request get pet details by ID, we have this X lifecycle lubricated. So we ran the HTML command before, right? In that, if we see the details there, we don't see that X lifecycle tag is present in that one. Extension is present in the HTML file. Yes. Here under the integer under pet ID parameter, we have only integer data type, but we don't see that particular extension lifecycle here. So I added that extension here in the config file. See, here the store extension, I showed the X lifecycle extension. So if in this format, we can add many extensions which we want to add in, which we want to replicate in an HTML file. So once I build the HTML command and build the HTML command, we can see like here the disable download button is disabled here, and also we can see that extension like X lifecycle extension is added here, lifecycle replicated. So in this manner, we can generate the HTML file using the multiple YAML files. So in this session, we learned like what is Redocly and how can we generate the HTML files using Redocly commands, and like how can we merge the different YAML files, and also how can we configure the HTML files using the Redocly. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.